intimate impact of Kevin's deteriorating condition. During her latest session, Winter demonstrated the expanding scope of her father's obsession. The evidence library has new rooms now, Winter explained while creating another precise architectural drawing. Dad says we need more space for all the proof. He's added special sections for everyone who helps Mom. Dr. Blackwood's professional assessment became increasingly urgent. Kevin's compulsion to document has evolved into a severe manifestation of his control issues. He's now targeting anyone who threatens his narrative. Merritt's colleagues began receiving elaborate dossier detailing their interactions with her. Nurse Rodriguez discovered a 50-page analysis of her break room conversations with Merritt, annotated with supposed evidence of conspiracy. Kevin's message to Merritt reflected his increasingly unstable state. Documentation proves systematic corruption in hospital administration. Timeline reveals coordinated effort to conceal professional misconduct. Winter safety requires immediate intervention. The situation reached a critical point during a scheduled visitation exchange. Kevin arrived carrying multiple recording devices and a new ledger dedicated to documenting Merritt's appearance. His hands shook as he attempted to measure the exact distance between Merritt's car and the curb. Everything must be recorded precisely, he insisted, his usually controlled voice rising. The evidence must be perfect, the documentation must be complete. Winter, watching for Merritt's car, began arranging her school books in parallel lines, mirroring her father's increasing agitation. Dad's going to need new color codes, she whispered. The old ones don't cover everything anymore. Detective Hayes documented the exchange from a distance, adding it to their growing evidence file. His compulsion is overwhelming his ability to maintain his professional facade. The pattern suggests imminent psychological breakdown. Kevin's deterioration accelerated when he discovered Dr. Blackwood's official psychological assessment of Winter. His reaction manifested in a 100-page rebuttal analyzing every word of the report with obsessive precision. Merritt received his message late that night. Investigating Dr. Blackwood's entire career, evidence suggests coordinated attempt to undermine documentation protocols, adding new wing to evidence library for psychological conspiracy documentation. Dr. Blackwood's response was immediate. Kevin's fixation on documentation has reached critical levels. His inability to maintain professional appearances suggests the system he created is consuming him. The evidence of Kevin's psychological state mounted as his behavior became increasingly erratic. His business partners reported him converting office spaces into evidence storage, walls covered with photographs and tracking charts. Winter's next therapy session revealed the extent of his deterioration. Dad doesn't sleep in his bedroom anymore, she reported. He stays in the library talking to the pictures. He says he's close to proving everything, he just needs more evidence. Detective Hay confirmed Winter's observation through surveillance reports. Kevin's obsession has overwhelmed his daily functions. He's approaching total psychological breakdown. Merritt's security system captured Kevin conducting midnight documentation sessions, measuring and photographing every aspect of her home's exterior. His messages became streams of numerical data and color codes. The systematic destruction he had planned for Merritt was instead revealing his own psychological unraveling. Each new piece of evidence he created further documented his deteriorating mental state. Dr. Blackwood's final assessment was unequivocal. Kevin's compulsive documentation has evolved into a severe psychological condition requiring immediate intervention. His behavior poses an escalating risk to Winter's emotional well-being. The storm of Kevin's obsession had broken, revealing the fragility of his carefully constructed control. His own evidence was becoming the strong testimony against him. The legal confrontation crystallized during a supervised visitation session at the County Family Services Center. Kevin arrived carrying multiple recording devices and a newly expanded documentation system, his deteriorating psychological state evident in his increasingly rigid behavior protocols. The court-appointed supervisor Dr. Elena Martinez observed as Kevin attempted to implement his standard documentation procedures within the confined spaces. His hands trembled noticeably as he positioned recording equipment at precise angles, measuring distances with obsessive attention to detail. Winter must maintain proper documentation standards, Kevin insisted, producing a new set of observation forms. The evidence collection cannot be compromised by supervised limitations. Winter's response to her father's behavior provided crucial documentation for their case when Kevin presented his standard observation checklist exhibited Severe anxiety symptoms. Immediately beginning to arrange the room's furniture in parallel lines. Winter. Kevin instructed, his voice carrying an edge of desperate control. Document mother's recent infractions according to established protocols. Winter's resistance to participating in his documentation system marked a significant shift. I don't want to record anymore, Dad, she whispered, her hand still automatically straightening objects on the table. The evidence library scares me now. Kevin's reaction to this deviation from his established patterns proved particularly revealing. His carefully maintained facade cracked completely as he produced extensive files documenting Winter's previous compliance with his observation protocols. The documentation must be maintained, he insisted, his voice rising as he spread papers across the visitation room floor. Every interaction requires proper evidence collection. The system cannot survive without complete data integration. Dr. Martinez intervened when Kevin began attempting to measure Winter's sitting angle with architectural tools. Her professional documentation of the incident provided additional evidence of his psychological deterioration. Detective Hayes, monitoring the situation, noted Kevin's increasing inability to maintain his previous methodical approach. His documentation system, once a tool for controlling others, had evolved into a comp ion that now controlled him. Merritt received urgent messages from both Dr. Blackwood and Detective Hayes during the visitation. The psychological assessment team recommended immediate suspension of Kevin's visitation rights based on his exhibited behaviors. Winter's reaction to her father's deteriorating condition proved especially significant for their case. During the visitation, she demonstrated clear awareness of the harmful nature of his documentation obsession. Dad keeps saying he needs more evidence, she confided to Dr. Martinez after Kevin's extended attempt to document her posture adjustments. But the evidence library isn't about proving things anymore, it's about making everything stop changing. Kevin's final message to Merritt that evening revealed the extent of his psychological unraveling. Documentation protocols compromised by supervision requirements. Evidence collection incomplete. System integrity requires immediate restoration of unrestricted